So what is the most common cause for the Cushing syndrome, doctor? It is our steroids which we have given exogenously will be responsible for the Cushing's is what need to be remembered. Can you tell me 3-4 indications commonly we give steroids, doctor? Suppose you have given it for autoimmune diseases like SLE, rheumatoid arthritis and all these various conditions you should not basically forget. Now this is a challenging question, doctor. In the malaria, the rapid detection test dipstick methods typically employ which antigen of the malarial organism is a question. Basically 3 things are used in this spot dipstick test, doctor. One is called histidine-rich protein 2 which is there in the Plasmodium falciparum. You have one pan-malarial Plasmodium aldolase and lactate dehydrogenase which is very parasite specific. They are the 3 things, not the histidine-rich protein 1 is what need to be basically remembered. Now 1-2 comments about each of them. Histidine-rich protein 2 is basically water soluble. It is produced by the asexual stages and the gametocytes of the falciparum. It is expressed on the red cell membrane and it will be remaining in the blood for at least 28 days even you have initiated anti-malarial therapy. One of the common situation that you come across is already chloroquine was received and he came to me, can still the dipstick method can be sensitive or not? Definitely it is sensitive up to 28 days is what need to be remembered. Plasmodium aldolase, it is expressed by the blood stages of the falciparum but not by the, and as well as the non-falciparum species is what I want to underscore to all of you. You have one parasite LDH also, it is produced by the asexual and the sexual phases found in all the 4 human species of the Plasmodium is what need to be remembered. So simply take a sample of the blood, put the dipstick and it will be positive, 1 dot will come or 2 dots have come. Based on that you will decide is he infected or not. Because malaria is a common entity in our hospital, you need to know about the dipstick. So you can see, doctor, this classical test called parasite F test, you can see that suppose if it is negative nothing will be shown. But if it is Vivax positive, you find that this is control, this Vivax 1 is positive. If falciparum then 2 will be positive. So this is an example of a dipstick method in the case of the Plasmodium, malarial detection. So remember, doctor, finally H is histidine-rich protein 2, aldolase and LDH should not be basically forgotten. Let's go to the next question. Fitz-Hugh-Curtis syndrome is very uncourteous in this entrance because generally gonorrhea is what we read long ago, but that's not the answer. It is the chlamydia which has superseded the gonorrhea as the Miss World is what need to be basically understood. So that's the reason, doctor, nowadays pelvic inflammatory disease, most common organism is chlamydia and it is responsible for developing of this Hugh-Curtis syndrome. What is this, doctor, basically? It is the right upper quadrant pain because the ascending pelvic infection with the inflammation of the liver capsule and the diaphragm is called the Fitz-Hugh-Curtis syndrome is what need to be remembered. How do you diagnose? Laparoscopy is considered to be the best method so that you can directly visualize that capsule. Now can you tell me, doctor, what is the classical finding you find in the liver capsule, doctor, in the case of the Fitz, in the case of the Hugh-Curtis syndrome, doctor, Fitz-Hugh-Curtis syndrome? What is that classical finding? You find violin string adhesions on the anterior liver capsule in the anterior abdominal wall of the diaphragm is typically the laparoscopic finding in the Fitz-Hugh-Curtis syndrome. Let's go to the next question, very interesting question. HIV patient, what is the fat distribution? There is something called HIV associated lipodystrophy. I think a similar question we discussed in one of the Sunday test programs. That is, if you give protease inhibitors, then what is the type of distribution that you get, doctor? Fat will go and accumulate in the nape of the neck called the buffalo hump appearance is what you see if you give the protease inhibitors. Similarly, even the HIV will also cause the redistribution of the fat basically. So patient will come and thank you. Oh doctor, your drugs are wonderful. Nowadays I have become very fat. Can I continue the old habit? You should say, no, you should not continue. It can be because of 2 reasons. Your HIV caused it or the protease inhibitors I have given has made you to become little smarter. So please remember, doctor, there's a loss of the fat on the cheeks and the temples and extremities and deposition in the neck and the upper back and the mastoid and the chest and the visceral, not the exterior abdomen, inside abdomen. So visceral abdomen, there is a fat gain. So that's the reason, of course, abdomen and buffalo hump are fighting with each other to become the answer. But anyway, buffalo hump is one of the classical redistribution of the HIV lipodystrophy is a very well proven fact which is unmistakable. Let's go to the next question. Vitamin B12 in the case of the chronic myelomonocytic leukemia typically become elevated is what I want to underscore to all of you. Now, what are the important features of the chronic myelomonocytic leukemia, doctor? One more Murphy's law, don't forget. Any entrance you write without a question on leukemia or lymphoma, there is no question paper. So, please remember, absolute monocytosis, elevated serum lysozyme, elevated serum vitamin B12, these are all the features in the case of the CMML is what I want to underscore to all of you. Let's go to the next question. Ventricular tachycardia. So, ventricular tachycardia, how do you want to do? So, VT and VF, doctor, housemanship at least once you need to defibrillate, then that authenticizes your 4-lettered MBBS degree. So don't forget that casualty posting will give you a wonderful opportunity, and it's very important to master this. So what is VT basically? Rhythm is faster than 100 beats per minute, and it is originating distal to the bundle of His is basically called VT. Most common situation is heart attack, ischemic heart disease is responsible for the VT is what I want to underscore to all of you. So in this, there is a disorganized rapid ventricular rhythm that will be continuously varying in the waveform, and in its interval is what need to be remembered. So there is a variant called polymorphic VT, rapid polymorphic VT. This rapid polymorphic VT can look like morphologically like a VF. So it's very challenging. In fact, is it that rapid polymorphic VT called torsade de pointes with a long QT syndrome, which we discussed, no? Long QT, and the QT interval is greater than 0.6 seconds, then such individuals can develop a polymorphic VT, and any point of time this polymorphic VT can what you call worsen. That's the reason you have to be very careful. So this typically presents the 4 different panels, doctor. This is the abrupt onset of a monomorphic ventricular tachycardia. All these VT waves are similar in their appearance, and this arrow suggests the place where you are expecting P waves. So virtually QRS complexes will be marching over that of the P waves. That's what you see in the case of the VT. And this gives you prolongation of the QT interval, and that lead to development of this kind of polymorphic VT. And this gives you an abrupt onset of the VF in a patient who is receiving the quinidine and digitalis. So toxicity can lead to abrupt onset of the VF, which is very dangerous. And this is how the VF can continue. So like the signature of the RMO while giving your housemanship certificate, so a typical type of ECG is ventricular fibrillation is what need to be remembered. So you can say, if you don't give me a certificate because of my absence to the hospital, I'll take one ECG and paste it under the certificate. So typical signature like. Now VT, if it is associated with loss of consciousness or the pulselessness, severe hypotension, no more talking, doctor. You have to do what you need to do. Immediate cardioversion need to be done, and 200 to 360 joules of the monophasic shock need to be delivered. So if you don't do that, you will only be remaining reading the CMDT without doing forever and ever in life. So that's the reason you have to do give a shock. Whereas if the hemodynamic status is stable with the VT going on the ECG monitor, then you can give a trial of the intravenous medication. Commonly underlying ischemia is responsible. You need to take care of that ischemia. Suppose if the LV function is impaired, what is the antiarrhythmic that you want to choose in order to take care of the VT of the patient who is otherwise hemodynamically stable? Amiodarone or lidocaine can be given, but not the procainamide, because procainamide can worsen in a patient with LV dysfunction because the ischemia which is leading to this VT to originate. In him, there can be a worsening of this congestive heart failure. Suppose if this medical therapy is unsuccessful, then what do you want to do? Then you can do once more the cardioversion, but by delivering about 50 to 200 joules after giving sedation is what I want to underscore to all of you. And one more important thing is, this polymorphic VT need to be classically differentiated from that of the VF. It is very, very important. Suppose if it is a polymorphic VT, then in that case magnesium, isoproterenol like the beta blocker, and giving the pacing, they are all considered to be the choices. You can also give phenytoin or lidocaine because it will shorten that QT interval which is predisposing to this polymorphic VT is what need to be basically remembered. Generally, doctor, VT patients will have either ischemia or dyselectrolytemia. If you don't correct those two, only keep on giving shocks, finally patient will be exhausted. Correct the hypokalemia which is there in the patient, correct the ischemia of the patient, then that will only can be bring back the rhythm in addition to your shock therapy is what need to be remembered. Let's go to the next question. So finally, what is your answer, doctor, at the end of all the story? Defibrillation, synchronized defibrillation is considered to be the choice, is what you need to remember. That's the reason, as a house surgeon, when you enter into the casualty, first thing you should check, his intubation set is alright, his defibrillator is alright, then you can start your duty like a prince. Otherwise, you need to worry, at the end patient will die in a helpless state. Let's go to the next question. Cryptogenic organizing pneumonia. I think all of you know a very important condition called BOOP. What is BOOP, doctor? Bronchiolitis obliterans with organizing pneumonia is a very important condition, BOOP, which is very similar to that of the cryptogenic organizing pneumonia. Typically, what is organizing pneumonia? In the distal air spaces, there is the presence of a lot of granulation tissue, which is called as the organizing pneumonia, generally that lead to development of a severe hypoxemia. Now, there are two important entities which you have to basically understand. One is called the BOOP and other is called the cryptogenic organizing pneumonia. Both are very similar. There are some important features that you need to basically remember. In the case of the BOOP, the cryptogenic organizing pneumonia, if you give steroid to the patient, wonderfully all his organizing pneumonia will resolve and he will become totally happy. Any given point of time, if you send the arterial oxygen analysis, they'll be having hypoxia. And they'll be having a lot of migratory infiltrates in the lung. Another important clue, last month in the upper lobe, this month in the middle lobe, next month in the lower lobe, migratory lung infiltrates is there in a hypoxic individual who is continuously having hypoxia. You need to suspect the BOOP as a very important possibility. Now can you tell me, doctor, what is the investigation of choice for the BOOP? Typically HRCT will reveal the presence of the peribronchial thickening, the patchy areas of the ground glass. These are all very classical features. In the case of the BOOP is what need to be basically remembered. But one important thing is BOOP leads to development of or the cryptogenic organizing pneumonia leads to what type of pattern of lung disease, doctor? Restrictive or obstructive? Restrictive, not the obstructive pattern is what need to be remembered. That's the reason B becomes the answer, is what need to be remembered. Let's go to the next question. Favorite question, favorite illustration of the Robbins pathology from the times immemorial. Where do you find the vegetations on the undersurface of the valve, where along the valve line closure? All this you have to be mastered about, doctor. Liebman-Sachs endocarditis, otherwise called the atypical verrucous endocarditis. Where do you see it, doctor? In SLE is a very important condition. It can develop on either surface of the valves, but undersurface is much more common. They are not large and they rarely embolize, is the good news about the Liebman-Sachs endocarditis. What is the difference between the merantic endocarditis? What's that of the Liebman-Sachs? Liebman-Sachs of SLE will lead to the inflammation and destruction of the valve, but not the merantic endocarditis. So what you are seeing here, this flat, pale, tan spreading vegetations on the mitral valve surface are classical in the case of the SLE associated Liebman-Sachs endocarditis is what need to be remembered. Rheumatic heart disease, if it is of a long nature, it can lead to development of the vegetations, but generally vegetations will be there along the upper surface, and the point of the fusion of these commissural lines, typically you find the vegetations in the case of the rheumatic heart disease.